Hey guys, Copper Cutlass checking in here. Differential is all buttoned up in its entirety, axle to axle, and all buttoned up, patterned out good after I tightened everything down. And I decided to start kind of tearing into the engine. I took the timing cover off because I'm going to have to replace the gaskets. I'm probably going to drop the oil pan as well and redo that seal as well, clean everything up. It's going to get a coat of GM blue, which, as you can see, it actually was GM blue at one point. Surprisingly, this engine's been in service for about over 10 years, and this timing chain is actually still in pretty good shape. There's not much slack to it. I just checked right now for push rod length. Our pattern isn't horrible. I could get it a little tighter, but it'd be a little off center, which beats up the guides. So I went with one that had a little sweep, and I'm in the center, and that ended up being an 8.250 because I rounded up. I might try to find an 8.250 in a stock application through like the search engine at Summit. But if not, then you have to order like trick flows, and those only come in 50,000 increments unless you order custom. So I'm not really too worried about it because our pattern was pretty good overall, going from like well above that and under that. It kind of stayed near center. It never shot up towards the edge of the valve or the the bottom edge of the valve or the top edge. It stayed pretty good. So there's a lot of videos on this, but I wanted to show you guys a couple of things to look for that I've ran in the past. I kind of learned the hard way, and nobody mentions this. So I'm going to go ahead and take out the poly lock, remove the rocker arm, put that down over here. So you want to make sure when you check for push rod length that you're not bringing your rocker arm so far down that you're binding it up. I made that mistake in the past where I didn't factor in my preload, and I was going like half a turn. So that's roughly about 40 thousandths of preload based off of the thread pitch. So what was happening was, as I was tightening it down and the lifter was compressing, the rocker arm was dropping, and it was actually digging into this two-lipped area of the rocker arm stud. So look out for that when you set it up. Make sure you're not too far down. You also don't want to be too far up. Now, another thing to check for, and I learned this on the current engine. Oh, shit. That thing decided to go for a dive. Don't worry, I'll clean these up before I put them on. So let's say, obviously I can't turn the engine because I'm solo today, but let's say, your rocker arm is going to move, right? You want to make sure that you're not binding anything up. Now on these, you're not going to run into this issue, but if you go with like a full roller rocker where they have a body, you could run into clearance issues at like certain lifts. So on the Bad Dog 350, I run a Ford rocker arm, a PRW stainless series. They're a little heavy, but they're bulky. They're good. It's a 1.6 Ford Windsor 302, whatever, rocker arm. Okay, so when I was putting the engine together, I checked for, my pattern. It patterned out good. And then, I put it on the engine stand, and I noticed that I had like valve train noise, and I wasn't holding consistent valve lash. It kept moving around. I'm like, something is moving that I cannot see. So I started putting a dial indicator on like the rocker arm, and I noticed that it was moving. So I put it on the poly lock, and I was actually moving the poly lock 20 thousandths. What was happening was the body of the poly lock was kind of bulky, right? So if you can imagine on a full roller rocker arm, it doesn't have like this valley, right? So you got like a nice wide oval on most roller rocker arms that are tapered to, clear for lift. And if you don't have adequate clearance there, what's going to happen is your rocker arm is going to smack into the poly lock and push it around. So that's something you want to look for if you go to a full roller rocker arm on your Oldsmobile, especially if you're running like a Ford rocker arm, because it's noted that if you go above 550 lift, you start running into clearance issues, which that's exactly what it did. But the fix there was you measure the diameter of your poly lock. Crowler makes some thin wall poly locks, or you can go to some thin wall like girdle poly locks, right? If you can find them in a 3/8. But Crowler makes a thin wall or a thin diameter poly lock to alleviate that, and I was able to continue to run those rocker arms along with I shortened down my push rod length about 50 thou. Actually, no, I went 100 thou. I shortened it. It changed my pattern a little bit, but not significantly to the point where I was worried about it. And clearly, our car has enough passes to where if I would have had any issues, I would have seen it. This car's got a bunch of street miles. I'm going to guess anywhere between 1,500 to 2,500. And we roughly got about 50 passes in last year. And every single time after the track, I would check the valve lash. I would check all the valves and make sure everything was good because I knew that was a problem, so I had to keep an eye on it. And again, it doesn't hurt to keep an eye on your valve train, especially when you're turning high RPMs and making sure that everything looks good in there. So I do a lot of that that I don't cover, like my due diligence, my checklist and stuff like that. But as far as that goes, it hasn't moved. So that fix worked out good. And just a couple of tips for you guys when you go to these, adjustable rock arms. These are like the die-cast ones from Comp. They work good. They're not bad. And again, the advantage I really want here is, one, it frees up a little bit of horsepower, but I can run less preload. I didn't check it right now, but on these, I'm going to go ahead and get like this cylinder on the base circle, put a dial indicator, and see how much preload is there, because it can vary on factory cars between 60 and 80 thousandths, and you can make a lot more power and turn more RPM with less preload. It might be a little noisy, but again, it's a trade-off if you're looking to make power. So for us, I'm going to run these probably at about 20 because I'm still running the spring clip type lifters. If you don't run enough preload, what happens is, if you don't run enough preload, the plunger on its way up smacks the spring and eventually beats it off the it beats it off the lifter, and the lifter falls apart. And it doesn't last long. It's an old racer trick. You need the lifters with the big C clips in there if you're going to run like zero lifter preload. And some guys actually run a little bit of lash if their class has to make them run a hydraulic cam. But that's like race wizardry for like stock eliminator stuff. I don't know too much about that, but I've been told that guys do that for power. So, but on this stuff, you guys got my input on that. I hope that was an informative vehicle. An informative video. Hopefully I'll order some push rods or find something. But this weekend it's going to be cleanup, seals, and we're going to go ahead and get everything together, paint the trans, paint the rear end, and we're going to be set, guys. So thanks.